Welcome to another episode of the Victory Podcast, driven by Audi. I'm your host, Keely Eure, joined by my co-host and former USC quarterback, Cody Kessler. Cody, it's rivalry week, part one, I should say, but it's USC versus UCLA. Excited to preview this one today.
Yeah, this is a big week, regardless of either team's record. And I know the season hasn't gone the way that both teams wanted it to, but this week has to mean a little bit more if you're a Trojan. And I understand that the transfer portal has taken away a little bit of the meaning of rivalry week, with so many new faces on this football team. But I fully expect the players that have been here, that have been Trojans for a couple years, some of the coaches on the staff that have played in some of these big-time rivalry matchups, to have the younger guys and some of these new faces ready to go in this football game. And what a great opportunity to be a Trojan this week. We get an opportunity to go out there and gain bowl eligibility. We can also deny UCLA from having the chance to play in the bowl game this year. So it has to mean a little bit more. And also, I'm excited for the opportunity to go play in the Rose Bowl. A lot of these guys haven't got that chance yet.
Yeah.
And that is a great atmosphere to be a part of. I think back to some of the games that I got to play in. But either way, we need to go out there and handle business on Saturday and bring the victory bell back home to USC where it belongs.
I thought it was really interesting. We kind of had a unique Trojans Live episode this week, and you guys got to talk to both Mike Williams and Taylor Mays. And
that was awesome.
I feel like it really put it in perspective because you guys talked about it, but the rivalry games have kind of lost its meaning a little bit in this era of the transfer portal and just what college football is today. But that's what makes college football so great. So it was great to hear from kind of, quote unquote, the old heads of how meaningful this matchup really is.
You could tell, too, when you asked Mike and Taylor, like they locked in when they got that question about what it meant to them. And you could see the frustration a little bit. I mean, it is. And that's part of the era of college football that we're in right now, and I understand that. And you get why it happens, right? The transfer portal, you see some of these coaches bounce around, you see players bounce around. You want to go get the best opportunity that you can, and NIL is a big part of that. But yeah, that's the unfortunate part is, committing to a school for 4 years, to really buying in to a program and everything that came along with when I was here. When you transferred, you had to go either the junior or the JUCO route, or you had to sit a year until you got an opportunity, and especially if you went within conference. Nowadays, it's just every year someone can go elsewhere. But yeah, no, it's got to mean a little bit more. That's why I love that Taylor is on the staff. I love that Mike Williams is there. I love that we have players that have been here for a couple years too, that are veterans on this football team that have played in this game before. Kyle Ford is probably someone to talk to this week.
Yeah.
He's, it's going to mean a little bit more to him. Danton Lynn, another guy.
Yeah.
It's going to mean a little bit more this week. Kamari Ramsey, John Humphrey.
True.
I'm excited. There is a lot of storylines, but yeah, that is the unfortunate part of the transfer portal is that these rivalry games, although for us fans it doesn't, but some of these players it does lose a little bit of meaning and the history behind it.
Alrighty, excited to dive into this one. Before we do, just a couple reminders. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcast. If you ever want to get your voice heard, be sure to look out for a tweet or a question box either on Twitter or Instagram. Our socials are VictoryPodUSC. And if you are an audio listener, you can send us a text. It's in the description of each episode. And also, there's a new blood donation competition happening among Big Ten schools, and there's $1 million prize on the line. If you bleed Cardinal and Gold, donate blood and submit for the USC Trojans at big10.org/Abbott, ABBOTT, before December 10th. And people, USC is ranked 17th in the Big Ten. So
17 of 18 right now.
This is obviously a competition, but it's for a good cause.
Yeah,
there's a worst blood shortage in the last 20 years right now. So it helps save lives and, put some competition into it.
I'll say this, a question too, maybe for people, listeners at home. I don't know if you have the answer for this or we can find out. How do you know that you're donating for USC? Is that, or how do they know?
Go to big10.org/Abbott,
and then
ABBOTT.
And then you say that you registered or that you donated, and then it counts towards the university that you're supporting?
I believe so. I have not donated blood myself, but I believe that's how you do it.
Okay.
And it might send you to go to this donation center.
Perfect. But it's all on the website. We'll just go there and then take care of everything.
There you
gotcha.
go.
Yeah. So if you're capable of and have the opportunity, let's get after it.
For sure. Alrighty, Cody. I know you like to start with the coaching staff for each school. UCLA, who are we looking at here?
Yeah, we're going to start with their head coach, Deshaun Foster, a very familiar name, both as a coach and a player. This is his first season as UCLA's head coach, 10th season overall with the Bruins as a coach. UCLA is 4-6 this year under Foster. Some notable wins are Nebraska and Iowa. A couple losses they've had this year against Oregon, LSU, Penn State. They played a very tough schedule. Going into the year, they had the number one strength of schedule in the Big Ten.
Wow.
And it has been exactly that. Most recently, they're coming off a loss to Washington, 31-19 a week ago, and that was a Friday night game. Now, I'm sure a lot of Trojan fans recognize the name Deshaun Foster. He was a star running back for UCLA from 1998 to 2001. He then went on to play 6 seasons in the NFL. Foster then started his coaching career at UCLA in 2013, left to go be a running back coach at Texas Tech for 1 season, then came right back to UCLA to be their running back coach in 2017. He's been coaching running backs for the last 7 years and was set to do so again this year for UCLA under then head coach Chip Kelly. But for those of you that remember, Chip Kelly left for Ohio State to be their offensive coordinator on February 9th of this year. And it was one of those abrupt moves we talked about. I think we were in studio. It
happened the day we were going to record a podcast. So you and I talked about the news as it happened.
Well, and that was the biggest question on the episode was who are they going to hire? Are they going to go elsewhere? It's February 9th. Late, a lot of these head coaches or coordinators have already solidified themselves at other position or at other spots. So it was going to be a tough thing for UCLA, but they decided to stay in-house. Just 3 days later, they promoted Deshaun Foster from running back coach to head coach. Now, he has had some struggles this season, but they have been dangerous as of late. The Bruins are 3-1 the last couple of weeks, and they're looking to keep that momentum against the Trojans this week.
Yeah, it seems prior to the Washington loss that they actually were gaining momentum as a team.
3 in a row. Yeah, 3 in a row before that.
Is that your analysis as well?
Yeah, and those were tough matchups. It just feels like, and we talk a lot about the identity of a football team, and we'll talk about this a little bit more when we break down each side of the football. And the stats aren't great, right? They're not doing anything exceptionally well. Really outside of maybe run defense is where they're really excelling this year, and that helps a lot in the Big Ten, and that's helped a lot with their success the last couple of weeks. But just getting that momentum, right? I always talk about how dangerous teams are.
Yeah.
When you start firing all cylinders, you figure out your identity a little bit, your quarterback starts playing a little bit better, you get in a rhythm. The most dangerous teams are the teams that get hot in October, November, right? And UCLA is in that category, and like I said, they're 4-6 right now. They need to win these next 2 games to become bowl eligible, but we can play spoiler and solidify ourselves in a bowl game, but also keep them away. But
now, when it comes to UCLA's offensive coordinator, I'm curious to see your full breakdown, just because I haven't really paid attention to UCLA so far this season, but he's a notable name as far as just being an offensive mind. And so, given the time constraints that we talked about when it comes to UCLA's, coaching changes and making sure that they had someone ready for the 2024 season, just curious how he's fared so far this season.
Yeah. As a coach, he's been one of the best in the football world in the last decade, but at UCLA, they have struggled. And they're starting to find a little bit of a rhythm, but the numbers aren't great this year. But yeah, the offensive coordinator is Eric Bieniemy. I'm sure a lot of football fans recognize that name. A very good and very respected offensive coordinator in the football world. This is his first season as UCLA's offensive coordinator and his second time back at UCLA. He coached running backs from 2003 and 2005 for the Bruins, a very experienced coach at both the college and the NFL level. He's been coaching for 23 seasons. He was the offensive coordinator for Colorado from 2011 to 2012. May seem a little irrelevant, but some overlap for me. I was here at USC when Matt Barkley was a starter, but I thought that was interesting. I didn't know that at the time, and he really became a big time household name with the Kansas City Chiefs, and that's what we'll talk about in a second. But yeah, he did. I get to play, or I was on the sideline, but played against him back in my time here at USC. He then went on to coach, like I said, for the Kansas City Chiefs from 2013 to 2022, where he started out as their running back coach before taking over as their offensive coordinator in 2018, and then spent the rest of his time with the Chiefs as an OC. He then spent 1 year as the offensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders in 2023 before coming to UCLA. Bieniemy has been responsible for some of the most explosive offenses in the NFL over the last 7 years, and he knows what it takes to win. His pedigree as a coach and as a player is very impressive. He's coached in 3 Super Bowls and has won 2 of them. He's played in a Super Bowl as a player as well for the Chargers back in 1994, and he was also the star running back for the Colorado Buffaloes when they won their first and only national championship back in 1990. Bieniemy is trying to create the same success here at UCLA for the Bruins, although they have been struggling a little bit on offense this season.
Now, when it comes to UCLA's defensive coordinator, I'm going to wager, Cody, that this is the first year for their DC.
Yeah, you are correct in saying that. That's because we went and grabbed Danton Lynn, who was there at UCLA a year ago and now is here with us on the good side with the Trojans, which I'm very excited about that move. But they did hire within, like they did with Deshaun Foster. Defensive coordinator is Ikaika Malloy. This is his first season as UCLA's defensive coordinator, his 3rd season overall with the Bruins. Malloy has been coaching for 26 years. 5 of those has been as a defensive coordinator. Most recently, he was at Washington from 2016 to 2021 as their defensive line coach, linebacker coach, and then was promoted to co-defensive coordinator for his last 2 seasons with the Huskies. He then came over to UCLA in 2022 to coach linebackers and was a special teams coordinator before being moved to the defensive line in 2023 under Danton Lynn when he took over as defensive coordinator. He was then elevated to defensive coordinator this offseason after Lynn left, like I said, for the better school, and came over to the good side. But it's interesting, though, because Malloy was with Lynn a year ago when he put together a great game plan for the Trojans going against us in the Coliseum, and they played very well in that football game. Our offense struggled in that game, so are they going to use some of that same the formula or the game plan from a year ago? But the other side of that, too, is I guarantee you Malloy this week is meeting with Bieniemy and talking about how to go out and game plan against Danton Lynn and the things that he does and the ins and outs, because Malloy and this coaching staff and some of the staff or the coaches that are still on staff that were with Lynn last year spent hours in those meeting rooms, spent hours game planning, spent hours of picking Lynn's brain and how he coaches and how he game plans and how he does all these different things. So it's going to be the ultimate chess match this week, and I can't wait to watch it. But there's some little extra motivation for some of these coaches as well as the players in rivalry week, and we're playing for the victory bell.
Yeah.
What more do you want in a matchup? I guess maybe be a little bit better if it was a meaningful game, or it was a little bit more meaningful when it came to implications for the Big Ten or postseason. But either way, it's going to be a great matchup, and I can't wait to watch both these coaching staffs going head-to-head on Saturday.
Alrighty, well, let's dive into it further. Looking at UCLA's offense, statistically, how have they been doing this season? Yeah,
they've struggled a little bit pretty much in every area this year on offense under Bieniemy in his first season. Scoring offense right now, they're averaging 18 points per game, which is 123rd in college football. Total offense, 320 yards per game, which is 121st. Passing offense is where they've seen a little bit of success through the air, 235 yards per game, which is 58th in the country. And then rushing offense has been almost non-existent. One of the worst teams in the country right now with running the football, 85 yards per game, which is 129th out of 134 teams in the country. And then third down conversion, been right around average at 43%. Red zone touchdown conversion, though, has struggled. And I added this in because a week ago against Nebraska, kind of the same story. So we've got to be great down in the red zone. Ended up winning us the football game there at the end, but they only have a 35% touchdown conversion rate when they're down in the red zone.
Okay, so then when it comes to key players, how did you identify them, and who did you identify?
Yeah, I'm going to start with my first red dot player of the week, and that's quarterback Ethan Garber, 6'3", 210-pound senior. He's 189 for 294 on the year, which is 64% completion percentage, 2,173 yards. He has 14 touchdowns and 11 interceptions, so been turning the football over a little bit, not as much as of late, and I'll talk about that in a second, but not quite a dual threat. He will run the football if the play breaks down, but I'm not putting him in that dual threat category. Has 128 yards rushing and 1 touchdown. Now, he has been playing some very good football these last 4 games, and like I said, protecting the football better recently. First 5 games, 4 touchdowns, 9 interceptions.
Wow, okay.
Last 4 games, during this time, they've gone 3-1. He has 10 touchdowns with 2 interceptions, so he's on a little bit of a heater, and he's a very hot and cold quarterback, and I'll kind of break that down, what that means and why he's kind of fitting in that category right now, but he's been playing some very good football lately. I got to give him credit there. My next red dot player is running back TJ Harden, 6'2", 220-pound junior. Now, like I said, the run game has been almost non-existent. You may be asking, why is a running back a red dot player? Because he is their leading receiver when it comes to receptions in the pass game. So he's very good out of the backfield. 106 carries, 384 yards for 1 touchdown, but he has 35 receptions for 336 yards and 1 touchdown through the air. They love to get him the football in the pass game, so we've got to be ready for that. A couple of their other running backs. The first one's Jalen Berger, 6'1", 215-pound senior. Did not play against Washington last week. He was questionable going into that game, but they expect to get him back this week. He's a transfer from Wisconsin and Michigan State. 42 carries, 178 yards, 3.7 average so far this season. The other running back, more of an athletic type, right? Berger and Harden are very similar, and both are used out of the backfield, but when they have their quick, kind of twitchy, speedy back, they like to put in as running back Keegan Jones, 5'10", 185-pound senior. 36 carries, 165 yards, and 1 touchdown. Also very active in the pass game, 19 receptions, 201 yards, and 1 touchdown through the air. Now, outside of Harden, like I mentioned, is their go-to receiver out of the backfield. They love to get the football. They're tight end. Maliki Matavau, he's a 6'6", 265-pound senior. He's my third and last red dot player this week. 31 receptions, leads the team in yards through the air, 371 yards, and he has 1 touchdown. Now, a couple of receivers that we got to be ready for. The first one is Logan Loya, 5'11", 185-pound senior, the veteran on this team. Yeah. He's been there.
We've heard that name a while.
Recognize the name. He's been there for a while. 26 receptions, 299 yards, and 4 touchdowns. The other 2 receivers to pay attention to are Quasi Gilmer, 6'2", 180-pound freshman, a name we haven't heard a lot, but he's playing some good football this year. 22 receptions, 253 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And then the last wide receiver is Titus Makiao Atamalala, 6'1", 190-pound junior, 19 receptions, 200 yards, and 1 touchdown on the season.
Now, you made a tight end a red dot, which I think makes all Trojan fans a little nervous. What's the Cody concern meter, if you will, when it comes to their tight end?
Yeah, I'm not too concerned. I mean, I did make him a red dot player because we've struggled with tight ends in the past, and I hate saying the name Tyler Warren and Dalton Kincaid, but and Kincaid is a little bit further back, so I don't want to put it in that category. But under Lincoln Riley and his tenure here at USC, the last couple of seasons since we've been doing this podcast, we have struggled with some of those bigger pass-catching tight ends, and Matavau is definitely in that category. It's just going to be interesting for me who Coach Lynn puts on him, right, for the game. If we play man-to-man, they love to go 1-by-3, which means they're going to put a tight end backside by himself and then put 3 receivers to the same side, whether spread out or in a bunch. They like to find mismatches. They like to find ways to get him the football, see who you're going to put on him man-to-man if you keep a corner out there. You know, we have some bigger corners, but if you have Jalen Smith, who I love, you know, his physicality, but that is a little bit of a mismatch when you put a tight end back there. If we're in zone he'll get some of those one-on-one matchups. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. But I'm excited. We have some very good cover players on this team, especially when it comes to those bigger corners that we have. We also have some safeties and a Keely Eure, Kamari Ramsey, Bryson Shaw have been playing a little bit better. Zion Branch too. Yeah. They can come down and cover him. But yeah, it's going to be a big matchup to keep an eye on Saturday.
Now, on the whole, how would you describe this Bieniemy offense at UCLA?
Yeah, this is a pro-style offense that loves to keep you guessing on the defensive side of the ball. They want to have a balanced attack, but they've struggled, like I mentioned, to run the football this year. But when they're at their best, they can run the football. And when you look at the numbers, they're 55-45 pass to run. So they don't completely abandon the run game. And these last couple of weeks, when they've been firing on offense, when they went on that 3-game winning streak, the run game has been a factor. And the numbers back that up. Against Iowa, 211 rushing yards. Okay. Right? They won that football game. Against Nebraska, 140 rushing yards on the road. They won that football game. They took some pressure off of Garbers. They took some pressure off this offensive line, who has had a lot of injuries this year. They're under their third-string left tackle. Wow. So as much as I hate to give them some excuses and give UCLA some credit, Bieniemy has done a good job, especially as of late with all the injuries they've had. And I'm not sure if you've seen – did you see the Washington injury report? I'm sure you do because you always see all those.
You know what's funny? I actually did because it's alphabetical.
Yeah.
And when I was looking at USC –
20 players.
It was like a mountain.
And it wasn't questionable. It was one player questionable and then like 20 players that are out. So they have had the injury bug this year. That has played a factor, and a big part of that is with their offensive line. Something we can take advantage of this week, though, of getting after the quarterback. But that's where they've really struggled to run the football. And you think of Bieniemy, right, with the Chiefs. They've always had a good run game. They've always been balanced. Patrick Mahomes back there at quarterback. They've been firing on all cylinders. That just really hasn't translated. But I do have to talk about or say they have had some injuries, so that has played a factor.
I know that pains you.
It does. I hate giving them credit, but I'm a big fan of Bieniemy. I will say that at the end of the day, I think he's a very good offensive coordinator, and I think the more time he has there, whether it's at UCLA or wherever else he goes, or if he gets a head coaching job, he's going to produce a good offense. He just needs a little bit of time. But again, talking about this offense a little bit more, be ready for some pre-snap movement, and they like to use that in the run game. They'll turn around and give a handoff to their wide receivers that come in fly motion. Love to move their tight end and running backs pre-snap. A big part of that, too, is they'll put a tight end or a running back out wide, then motion them back in instead of a receiver, because that's a good way to tell man or zone for your quarterback, right? If you have a linebacker or a safety that goes out wide with a tight end or a running back, it's man-to-man. Yeah. If it's just Jalen Smith or Jacoby Covington out there, and then in motion they bump down, it's zone, and that helps a lot too. And Bieniemy does a great job of that, of allowing Garbers to play fast by using some of those things. Back to the Chiefs, how many times with Travis Kelce, they'd put him out wide, then bring him back in. So Mahomes knew if it was man or zone, so he can get going and know where his reads are and go through progression. But like I said, in the run game, be ready for the fly sweeps, handoffs like we do with Zachariah Branch, but also be ready for them to get on the outside. They love to get on the edges to protect their offensive line with some of these injuries.
Okay.
You're not going to see a ton of downhill running, ton of toss plays. Last week against Washington, same thing. Against Nebraska, they love to get their running backs out on the edge, love to use a ton of screen plays, so be ready for that as well. And they will use, again, another week, both under center and shotgun. And when they go shotgun in the pass game, there are some spread tendencies to it, but this is another Washington, Nebraska pro-style West Coast type of offense, to where they'll get under center, run the football, play action, and then they get in gun, be ready for some of those pass plays, but you're not going to see a ton of zone read. You're not going to see a ton of those, quick RPOs, the things that we do here at USC. It is at its core a very much so a pro-style offense.
Now, you described Ethan Garbers as a hot and cold quarterback. Is there a specific reason as to that, and a specific reason to why he's gotten better over these last several games?
Yeah, the main thing for me is it's two reasons, really. One is that he's starting to get into a rhythm, right? And I've talked about before, as a quarterback, as a hitter in baseball and all these different sports, when you get into a slump, when you feel like things aren't going your way, right? When you can't get into a rhythm, Zachariah Branch this year, talking about just having that big play to get things going. We've seen it with our receivers as well.
Yeah.
Feels like a different guy has a big play, but when he does, he starts to get into a rhythm a little bit. Kind of the same thing with Garbers, right? He struggled early on this season, 4 touchdowns, 9 interceptions the first 5 games. Felt like nothing was going his way. He couldn't do anything right. And then as of late, 10 touchdowns, 2 interceptions the last 4 games. The run game as well, going a little bit better against Iowa, against Nebraska. That plays a factor, takes some of that pressure off of him. And then the second part of that is, I think, just getting more comfortable in Bieniemy's scheme. This is his first time playing in this scheme. Like you mentioned, it was kind of out of nowhere. It was a little bit of a late hire, and they had to figure out and hit the ground running how to get things going, and figure it out in spring and then go right into fall camp and apply that to the season. So I think those are the 2 biggest things. Like I said, just him being able to get in a little bit more of a rhythm, but also be more comfortable in this offense. Now, when he does get in a rhythm, he's dangerous, and he's been dangerous the last couple of years. He doesn't have the strongest arm in the world. He's not going to push the football down the field a whole lot. They're only averaging 7 yards per attempt, so you don't have to be ready for a ton of shots down the field. But when he's in a rhythm, when he's going through progression, like I said, this past game, when they're throwing the football, it definitely is a West Coast spread type of offense, a ton of crossers. They like to get their running back out of the backfield. With Lincoln Riley a little bit, Steve Sarkisian, when we were here at USC, when I played, it reminded me a lot of that with the wheel route.
Okay.
Back down the sideline, you're going to have flood concepts or crossing concepts coming over as well with the backside one-on-one option. They do that a ton. Love to get the tight end involved. That's a staple of the West Coast offense, right? When you think about the Niners and all those Kyle Shanahan type offenses when they throw the football. So be ready for all of that. But the biggest thing we can do is we have to disrupt his timing. We have to take advantage of them struggling a little bit up front with some of their injuries. Like I mentioned, their third string left tackle had to play against Washington a couple weeks ago. They gave up 6 sacks in that football game.
Okay, wow.
We've got to get after the quarterback this week when Garbers isn't, and this is really anybody. It feels like a common theme, but it's true. That's a big part. When a quarterback can sit back there and play 7-on-7, it doesn't matter who he is, right? And to an extent, but it doesn't really matter who he is, especially when you have a veteran like Garbers. They're going to pick you apart. Guys are going to get open. It's tough for defenders to cover for 4, 5, 6 seconds when he can move around, when there's no pressure on him. We've struggled this year with pressure, but we have to this week take advantage of a depleted offensive line. They've given up a lot of sacks so far this year. Like I said, 6 last week. We've got to keep building off of that, and we've got to get these young guys that are continuing to get these reps right. It was great to see Elijah Hughes last week get in the backfield. Yeah. Sam Green's been playing a little bit better. Cameron Fallon's been playing better. These guys are slowly taking that next step forward, making some progress. We've just got to put it all together and get some pressure this week. Another thing, like I mentioned, they have crossers, they have level concepts. It's that high, medium, low. They're going to flood the boundary, be ready for misdirection and throwback screens. They do that a good amount. Bieniemy, too, is very creative. He's not quite Andy Kotelnicki at Penn State, but he's going to throw out some funky looks, some unique formations, some unique plays. Love to use that throwback screen like we did. Last week, Jayden rolling right, throwing it back to Woody Marks, having a big play there in the screen game, get the football to your playmakers in space, and that's why Harden is so high when it comes to, or he leads the team in receptions. Yeah. Love to throw on some screens. They love to get the tight end the football in the screen game as well. We just got to be ready for all of that. And then the last thing I'll say is Garbers, like I mentioned, not quite a dual threat quarterback. He's not a dual threat quarterback. They're not going to do a ton of zone read a crashing in, pull it, throw a little flat to Zach Ryer, do a ton of RPOs. But when the play breaks down, he's gotten a lot more comfortable in the pocket. And you can tell his timer in his head a little bit because of the injuries up front is a little bit quicker. And he knows if I see a lane, I'm going to take off and run. So Easton Mascarenas, Arnold, Mason Cobbs, guys in the middle of this defense have to be ready to track him down, work sideline to sideline, and go make a play on him. There's a play against Nebraska. Again, not a dual threat, but he had a 40, 50-yard run.
Goodness,
because they're playing two-man or they're playing man-to-man, and everyone clears out, and he sees that lane. If no one's there, he's going to take off and run. Like I mentioned, that has helped them. When they're successful on offense, they can run the football and throw it. Garbers has become a factor in that. That's also helped him become hot as of late.
Okay.
It gives you a little bit more confidence when you can get things going on the ground. But yeah, this is a good offense when they come to the pass game, and that's really the only area they've excelled in, right? They're 58th in college football and passing offense. But the last 4 weeks, 10 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. We've got to be ready for him because if we are not and we don't get pressure on him, he can hurt you a lot through the air.
Alrighty, let's move over to UCLA's defense. Before we do, just want to give a thanks to Audi. What you expect from an SUV is a range of sizes to fit your lifestyle. Expectations matter, but exceeding them matters more. The Audi family of SUVs, progress you can feel. And Trojan fans celebrate every USC win and enjoy the sweet taste of victory with a free donut at Ralph's the day after the win. Download your digital coupon from the Ralph's app to score your free donut at any Los Angeles area Ralph's store. Now, statistically speaking, this UCLA defense, where does it rank post Danton Lynn?
This is another hot and cold topic.
Okay.
For this UCLA football team, they're very good in some categories, and they are struggling heavily in some other categories. I'll start with scoring defense. They're giving up 27 points per game, which is 83rd in college football. Total defense, 346 yards per game. Right around average. That's pretty decent. 48th in the country. Passing defense, they have struggled. Jayden Maiava this week needs to take advantage of that. The receivers on the outside need to go get open and find some big plays there. They're giving up 245 yards per game through the air, which is 102nd in college football. Complete opposite of that, why I said hot and cold. Rushing defense, they're only giving up 100 yards per game, which is 7th in all of college football.
Yeah, wow.
And then let's go right back to cold on this next stat, because on third down defense, they're giving up a 51% conversion rate for their opponents, which is 134th out of 134 teams in college football. They are dead last right now on third down defense. They're also very bad when it comes to red zone defense. They're giving up a 75% touchdown conversion rate for their opponent, which is 123rd in college football as well.
Now, when it comes to key players, who are you looking at?
Yeah, their first player that I'm looking at is their linebacker, Carson Schwezinger. He is the best player on this defense. He's probably one of the best players in the Big Ten. Most likely going to be an All-American, most likely going to be first team All-Big Ten. He is a tackling machine. Like I said, the best player on their defense, MVP on the defensive side of the football, one of the best linebackers in the country right now. 109 tackles, which is first in the Big Ten, which is also 51 more than the next closest player on their team, which is a partner in crime, his other linebacker.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, he's playing very good football. 7.5 tackles for loss. He has 3 sacks, 2 pass defense, 2 interceptions, and a forced fumble. He is playing very good football. He's coming off of a 17 tackle performance last week against Washington. Multiple times this year, I think 7 or 8 games, he has double-digit tackle games. He is all over the field, especially in the run game. We're going to talk about why they're successful in the run game in a minute.
Yeah.
A big part of that is Schlesinger. Very good football player. We have to know where he's at all times. The other linebacker is Kane Medrano, 6'3", 230-pound senior, 58 tackles, which is second on the team. He has 2 interceptions. One he took back for a touchdown against Nebraska a couple of weeks ago. He has 2 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery, and 3 pass defense. A very good 1-2 combo with Schlesinger. This is why, like I said, they're very good in the run game. Both of these linebackers play very well, working sideline to sideline and coming downhill. Now, one of their better players on their defensive line is defensive end Oluwafemi Oladejo. I'm pretty sure that's correct, and I apologize if I misspoke there, but he's my second Red Dot player of the week. 6'3", 250-pound senior, 50 tackles this year, 3.5 sacks, which leads the team in a 2-pass defense. He's the best pass rusher, in my opinion, on their defense. Mason Murphy, Elijah Page, be ready for him. They'll move him from left. They'll move him to right side as well. We got to know where he's at all times, especially in the pass game. Now, their nickel defensive back is KJ Wallace, 5'11", 185-pound senior, 41 tackles, 1 sack, 7 pass defense. All over the field, very sticky in coverage. Think Greedy Vance Jr. in the slot, a very good football player that can travel with some of those quicker, speedy guys that are on the inside. One of their better secondary players is their safety, Ramon Henderson, 6'1" and 195-pound senior. He's a Notre Dame transfer, has 30 tackles so far this year. Another cover player is cornerback Kalen Moore, 5'11", 190-pound senior, 29 tackles, 1 forced fumble, 1 interception, 6 pass defense. So they're very good, it's interesting because when you watch the film, they do a good job in coverage and being in the right place at the right time and batting the football down. They're just 102nd in pass defense because they give up explosive plays. It's not quite a high-risk, high-reward like Washington, but when they give up a big play or when they're late a little bit, and I'll talk about with Malloy, their defensive coordinator, trying to be a little bit too
cute.
Don't want to say like Lynn. Yeah, just trying to be too confusing for teams. Guys are out of place a lot. You see a lot of wide open guys down the field, receivers, tight ends, because I think they're trying to do too much confusing things for opposing offenses to make you think, which works at times. But when you're doing so much, especially your first year,
when you're
in this scheme,
overloading
you're taking
your players.
Over, exactly. You're thinking too much, and I think that hurts them on the back end with their secondary, and they give up some big plays. But Kalen Moore's a good cover player. Another good cover player for them is Devin Kirkwood, 6'3", 205-pound senior. One of their bigger cover guys. I expect him to be on Jacoby. I expect him to be on Deuce Robinson, some of our bigger pass catchers on the outside. Now looking up front, their defensive line, my last Red Dot player this week is defensive lineman Jay Toya. Very good football player for this team. 6'3", 325-pound senior. Has 21 tackles and 1 sack up front. Again, a broken record with the interior of the Big Ten players and defensive line. I know UCLA came from the Pac-12, but that has been a common theme for Jonah Monheim, for Alani Noah, for Emmanuel Pregnon, who've been playing very good football this year, so I feel comfortable there, but we have to be ready for Toya. Another defensive lineman right next to him is Sidavini Havili Kafusi, 6'3", 295-pound senior, has 9 tackles on the year, and then their other defensive end is Jacob Busick, very good at getting after the quarterback.
Now, you talked about this defense, and this is a DC that was under Lynn. How similar is it to Lynn's defense?
I don't even probably need my notes this week because it really is. I mean, it's a 4-3 or a 4-2-5 when they go nickel, which you're going to expect a lot because of Lincoln Riley's offense. So I expect a ton of nickel this week. This is Danton Lynn's defense. It really is. Coach Malloy even said, and this is a quote from him back in the spring and fall camp, the scheme itself, we do not want to change. We want to keep that the same, right? And then he said again, he reiterated that we're going to keep the package the same. Now, obviously, personnel is going to change.
Sure.
And the way you call the defense when it comes to, what time to call this pressure and situations is going to change because Lynn and Malloy obviously are two different people, but Malloy spent a ton of time with Danton Lynn. Last year, you spend more time in those meeting rooms with coaches, with players than you do your own family, right? Especially during the football season. So it really is his same defense. Now, the biggest thing of that, like I said, personnel, they lost 5 key pass rushers from a year ago, and one of those being Latu, who was a first-round pick. They also lost both Murphy brothers, who are very good at playing outside, playing inside. They moved them around a ton, which they still do this year. And like I said, they have some good pass rushers on the edge. But when you lose that type of production, it's tough to keep up that same success, right? And Lynn over here at USC didn't keep up the same success a year ago. But, it's very tough to find a Latu as well. And the Murphy brothers, although they weren't first-round picks, but they're still in the NFL right now, and they're very good football players. When you have that type of personnel grouping, it makes your job a lot easier. We're still searching for that a little bit here at USC. And over the last couple of years, since Tuli left, Tui Pelotu, we've been looking for a dominant.
He's been
playing phenomenal too. That was a little name drop there for you Charger fans out there. But overall, this I would have loved to see Tuli too with Coach Lynn.
Oh yeah,
the production like Latu, I think would have been either right there, or maybe more. Yeah, and I think Tuli would have been a first round pick in this type of scheme. But that's what we're going to see. This is a huge benefit for us, though. and I guess for them too, which is the difficult part. But
yeah,
it is. That's why I say it's a chess match. Is we are facing the same defense that we faced all through spring ball, all through fall camp, and Danton Lynn. They're doing the same stuff. Put the tape on. You're going to see 2 interior players with their hand in the dirt. You're going to see 2 edge players stood up. On third down, I'll break it down a little bit more, but you're going to see them bring in 4 defensive ends. You're going to see a defensive end play over the nose. You're going to see overload. You're going to see all these different things that are very similar to what we did a year ago. It's just personnel is different, or what Lynn did a year ago and what we're doing now. It's just their personnel is a little bit different. And you can tell at times, like I said, they're a little hesitant getting lined up. They're a little late getting the call in, and they try to, which we don't do a ton here. And this is, I think, a little thing that Malloy's trying to add to, or it's maybe players not being as comfortable in the scheme with some of the new faces. They try to shift at the last second, right? They'll be in, for example, they'll be double B gap with both linebackers, and then literally right before the ball snap, they'll stem their defensive tackles out and put the linebackers inside, but the ball snapped while they're moving.
Oh.
And they do it too many times, in my opinion. But that's why I think they struggle on third down.
Okay.
When they show these exotic looks, try to move at the last second. They'll do it on early down and distance, but majority of the time it's on third down. But you've just got to be ready for them to move and change the picture literally right before the ball snap. Go watch the Washington game. They do it multiple times, but like I said, they are very similar to what we do here. You're going to see a 4-man rush majority of the game. You're going to see 2 key linebackers like a Cobb, Schwesinger and Medrano, just like Cobb and Mascarenas Arnold. You're going to see a nickel player like Greedy Vance, and you're going to see 4 DBs or 5 DBs on the field at all times. It's just very similar to what we do here at USC, and it's Lynn's defense is just facing it now. Now we have Lynn, and now we're going against what he used to do.
This is fascinating. I love the chess match that you break down. But I feel like also in some ways, you described that they're hesitant. Is this a credit to Lynn that one thing that when you were previewing UCLA last year and even talking about Lynn this year, we credited him for how fundamentally sound and how sound they were assignment wise. 100%.
And that's reiterated every single week when we have a defensive guest on Trojans Live.
Yeah.
When we have Taylor Mays on Trojans Live, I always ask him, and I'm a football nerd, so I love talking about Coach Lynn. Or when he was in here, I said, what separates Lynn from other places you've been? Right? What separates Lynn? I asked Taylor Mays, you've played in a lot of defenses. You played with a great defense here at USC. For a lot of great defensive-minded coaches like Pete Carroll, and you played the NFL. You did all these different things. Greedy Vance played at multiple different places. What separates Lynn? And they said his ability to communicate to his players, his ability to make sure that everyone's on the same page. And Greedy was saying something about whether I'm spot dropping or it's cover 2, whatever it may be. I feel like I know that fully, but if I don't, I'm never afraid to ask. You never fill out a place to say,
That's
Coach,
incredible.
I don't fully understand. And Coach saying, hey, we'll either figure it out or we're moving on. He will make sure everyone's on the same page, and that pays dividends. Are the numbers exactly there with Coach Lynn right now where we want to be, where we're top 5 defense in the entire country? No. Can we get there? 100%. But there is a drastic difference from a year ago to where we are now on the defensive side of the ball, especially on third down, pass defense, right? And remember, a year ago, I don't want to go backwards, but when Lynn was at UCLA and we had a different coaching staff here on the defensive side of the football, we were struggling to find productivity. We were in pretty much the lower third of every category on the defensive side of the football. We were giving up, I think, 35 or 45 points a game. We have not given up that once this year. Let that sink in. That's a huge stat. That's a huge factor. We're doing a good job of turning the page. We've got to be a little bit better, yes, but going back to the original question, the way that Coach Lynn can relate to his players, and he's a younger coach, right? That's just, it's unheard of at a lot of places, especially at high-level Division I college football, because it's, hey, can you play for me? If you can't, we're moving on. He makes sure whether you're a starter or a walk-on, or you're a starter who should know this already. Now, he shouldn't have to tell you that many times.
There's expectations, but I get what you're saying.
But yeah, at the same time, it's good that he can, make sure that everyone's on the same page and everyone feels comfortable in this scheme, so there's not a lot of misassignments on game days.
Sticking on that theme just quickly, for Jayden Maiava, we talked about last week preparing for Nebraska. It was a 3-3-5. It was kind of unique in that sense. Is this the polar opposite where he's going against something that he at least is comfortable with to a certain degree?
Yeah, this is a great second game for Jayden after, obviously the defense he played in Nebraska last week. And it's going to be a lot more comfortable for him because we talked about through the spring, through fall camp. He was in a very close battle with Miller Moss, right? So he spent a lot of time going against the ones, going against our very good players on defense, going against Kamari Ramsey, guys that have been in this scheme, right, against our starters. So that's going to help him a ton. It's going to feel like, hopefully, when you go on these type of matchups, when you're playing a similar defense to what you do at the school you're at, it can feel like in a glorified practice, right? You want to go out there and feel comfortable. You want to be able to play fast because you've seen all these looks on the defense side of the ball. You're seeing, obviously, it's a coaching tree, but you're seeing the creator of this defense, I guess, in a way, from UCLA a year ago, and then they hired within to someone who's calling the same defense that they did. So he can go out there comfortably and know, hey, I've faced this defense so many times. I can apply what I learned from a week ago. got to protect the football. That's the biggest thing for me this week. It doesn't matter what defense you're facing. You can't put the football in harm's way, but I think we're going to see him play a little bit faster, play a little bit more comfortable, and be a little bit better with his progression reads and going through, knowing where to get the football and identification before the ball is snapped, of knowing, okay, it's man-to-man, I have an alert backside. It's zone. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. I can play fast and take off and run instead of maybe doing some of those scramble plays where he's forcing some of those throws and trying to be the guy and hoping he can make the hero play. But, yeah, I'm excited. It's a big week. Like I said, 102nd team in college football in pass defense. They give up explosive plays. They give up big-time plays down the field, especially through the air. I think they're one of the lower teams in the country in 10-plus plays, which is in Lynn's category, explosive play, when it comes to giving up pass plays. So we've got to take advantage of that, and this is a big week for Maiava. Obviously, continue to be impressive with your legs and take off and run if it's not there, but take that next step as a passer this week and show that you can move the football down the field but also protect it.
Now, the one outlier in the stats that we talked about was their run defense. What's going on there? How are they so good at stopping the run?
Yeah, it comes down to two things. One is personnel, and the other is physicality, right? But in reality, it's three players on this defense that are stopping the run game, that are responsible for the success they've had there. The first one's Jay Toya, their defensive tackle, very physical player, great on the inside. The other two are their linebackers, Schlesinger and Medrano, right? Two very good football players. Schlesinger, like I said, leading the Big Ten in tackles, very instinctive players. They're very athletic, too, moving sideline to sideline, do a good job of coming downhill. And this is a huge challenge this week for our offensive line getting up to the second level, right? We're a zone blocking team. We're a block down, pull around. We like to pull Elijah Page into the second level. We like to put Alani Noah or Emmanuel Pregnon up on the second level in some of our guard tackle pull plays. These guys are difficult to block in space. Okay. They're slippery, I guess, is a way to put it. When you're working up to that second level and you have to block them in space, Medrano specifically, or Schlesinger as well, very good at dipping underneath your block and still being on the play, right? They're not going to be big, come downhill, blow up the play, hit you in the mouth, and overpower you, but they're very good with their athleticism of getting underneath a block and still making the play in the backfield, or forcing it back inside to Toya, or forcing it outside to Medrano, or to a nickel or a safety coming downhill to make the play. So they're very good in that aspect. We just have to be on our P's and Q's this week. But we've gone against some very good run defenses in the past, and we've succeeded, right? Nebraska a week ago. Yeah. Just gaping holes. Penn State earlier in the year, one of the best run defenses in the country, had some big-time explosive plays. That's where we are excelling this year on offense. And then also you throw Jayden Maiava into the mix and add that quarterback, pulling the football and taking off and running factor into it as well. I expect us to keep that up this week and be successful on the ground. Now,
you mentioned some funkiness, if you will, I'm reading between the lines about them on third down. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, it's going to be Coach Lynn's defense again on third down. You're going to see double A gap looks. You're going to see overload looks. You're going to see 4 defensive ends on the field. They're going to take out Toya and their other defensive tackle, take them out, bring in 4 defensive ends, have them stood. There's going to have 7 guys in the line of scrimmage. Not one person has their hand in the dirt. They're going to be all stood up, moving around, the radar type look where they're shifting and moving before the ball snap, trying to confuse you with your communication, with your identification and pass protection. A huge week for Maiava and for Jonah Monheim to be on the same page. It's not quite a 3-3-5, so I'm glad we're not doing that. But again, it is a very difficult defense to go against on third down. But the numbers are not there. And why I think that is, and like I talked about earlier on this episode, was that they move around too much pre-snap. They don't feel confident, or it doesn't look like they're confident in what they're doing. They have a lot of missed assignments, a lot of guys wide open down the field. Malloy, I think, is still getting comfortable as a play caller in this scheme. Now, he's been within this scheme before with Lynn, but he hasn't called plays before, right? And this is his first year doing it. There's a lot of new faces on this defense. They've had a lot of injuries, so some younger guys have had to step up. But overall, we just got to be ready to just prepare like we do at practice for Coach Lynn's defense, apply that to the game. Now, they're going to add some new wrinkles in.
Sure.
You got to expect that. You got to be ready for all that. But overall, you just trust what you've done all year in practice, trust what you've done in fall camp, lean back on that, go back to the Michigan game with the protection and some of those things that we had to clean up, right? Apply that to this week. Some of those defenses we faced to where you've seen this Lynn, Martindale type defense, figure out what you need to get fixed, address that this week in practice, but go out there and play free, play fast. And like I said, we need to take advantage of when they're late in their shifts or those last second movements or they're not getting lined up at the right time. And it's so tough on a defense. And we've talked about this the last couple of years. When you can't get lined up, you've already lost, right? And that's something I think they struggle with is communication pre-snap. That's something that we've taken over here at USC with Lynn, the obnoxious communication, everyone being in the right spot, lining up in the right place. That's why it's so important, like we've talked about before, guys talking about how good Lynn is at communicating and teaching a defense. It's tough to have that, especially with him being a younger player or a younger coach. He's a lot more relatable to the players. Not saying Malloy isn't, but you can see that on the film a little bit of them not fully confident in the play call or maybe not fully confident in the scheme or what they're doing, and then they get hurt on big plays. But yeah, we have to be great on third down. Like I said, they're the worst when it comes to opponent conversion percentage on third down. We've got to keep that up this week. We've got to extend drives and move the football down the field. And Jayden's either got to pick it up with his arm or be ready to take off and run with his legs.
Alrighty, Cody. Any other thoughts on UCLA's defense?
No, the last thing I'll say is they don't do it a ton, but just be alert and ready for some secondary pressures. They'll bring a nickel, they'll bring a corner, they'll bring a safety. They'll lull you to sleep a little bit, and not a big pressure team. They're going to want to drop, or they're only going to want to bring 4 for the majority of the game. When they bring a linebacker or an extra player as a pressure player, they're going to drop an end, right? So the majority of the game, you're only going to see a 4-man pressure. When they bring 5, like I said, they'll drop out an end, bring a linebacker. But when you're kind of getting used to, okay, this is pretty vanilla, they're not doing a whole lot, it's not as aggressive as Lynn, they'll bring a corner, they'll bring a safety. So just always be ready for that. Speaking specifically to the running backs, that's normally you have to pick up those secondary players. So just be ready for that. But other than that, if we can pick up their pressures, we can pick up some of these blitzes they're going to bring, then we can be able to hit them for some big plays down the field and hurt them through the air.
Alrighty, well, on that note, Cody, let's look at the game as a whole. It's time for the USC Mann School of Pharmacy prescription to win. It's the crosstown showdown, UCLA versus USC. First up, take away UCLA's passing attack.
Yeah, we have to force them to run the football this week. They're 129th in the country in rushing offense. The Bruins want to have a balanced attack, but they're most dangerous when Ethan Garbers is in a rhythm and he can throw the football all over the field. Garbers has 10 touchdowns and 2 interceptions in the last 4 games. The Bruins are 3-1 during that stretch. We have to get pressure on him all game long and force UCLA to try to win the football game on the ground.
Now, the second key to the game, be great in communication on offense.
Yeah, this UCLA defense is running the same scheme they ran a year ago under Coach Lynn. We have to be ready for those exotic looks, especially on third down. We have to be great in communication this week with Jayden Maiava, Jonah Monheim, and the rest of this offensive line to pick up some of these pressures. But if we can handle these pressure looks and pick up some of these defenses and these blitzes that UCLA is going to show, there's big plays to be made down the field in the pass game, especially on third down.
And the third and final key to the game is for Jayden Maiava. Take the next step.
Yeah, Maiava made some big-time plays a week ago, which was great to see, but he needs to eliminate some of those mistakes. He started the game 3 of 8 for 9 yards and a pick 6, but then he turned it around and had 22 of 27 passing for 3 passing touchdowns and 1 rushing touchdown, which is very encouraging to see, especially for a young player that he can overcome that adversity. The arm talent is there. The athleticism is there. The potential is there. He just needs to take that next step of protecting the football, not putting the ball in harm's way, not hurting his defense, especially when he had that fumble, but I fully believe he can do that under Lincoln Riley this week, and what a great opportunity to go out there and prove that in the Rose Bowl against UCLA on Saturday.
Alrighty, let's head into questions. Before we do, just want to give a thanks to Audi. Focus matters. Listen closely. The Audi Q8 e-tron's cabin is serenely quiet, so you can focus on other things like having tomorrow's technology today. The new fully electric Audi Q8 e-tron, how we get there matters. And at Ralph's, everyone wins when it comes to saving big, because when you order online through the Ralph's app, you get the same great prices, deals, and rewards on pickup or delivery that you do in store. So no matter how you shop, you always save big at Ralph's. Ralph's, fresh for everyone. Cody Kessler.
Right on.
There you go. First question is from De La Cruz, who said, what are you looking for in Jayden Maiava's development, safety recognition, technique and form, or decision-making?
Yeah, I think it's everything as a whole, and obviously I want to see him continue to be explosive in the run game. That was a huge factor last week, especially on that last drive on the 4th and 1 option play, and then finishing in the end zone, made a guy miss in the open field. I love that play call by Lincoln Riley, putting Walker Lyons at a pistol spot and putting the defense in a bind. But the area that I think he can really take that next step forward is protecting the football, right? Knowing when to be Superman, knowing when to be Clark Kent, right? Knowing that you don't have to make the hero play every single time. There's too many times in that football game that he tried to force some throws or put the football in harm's way. And I can live with the pick 6, and obviously you don't want that to happen. I feel like that kind of woke him up a little bit and got him settled into the football game, and sometimes that helps when something like that happens. And I told you on the sideline that I'm glad that happened. Now, wish it wasn't for a touchdown, wish it was maybe just a pick or a big hit,
sure,
but it helped him settle in a little bit. But the fumble in the third quarter for me, that's kind of specifically what I'm talking about, or forcing some of those throws that are put in harm's way. And some of the receivers obviously bailed him out a little bit, Deuce Robinson and Mackay on that tip football. That was great to see. But, yeah, overall, those mistakes to where it hurts your football team in those close games that we've seen before, that can't happen. Right? You've got to move on from that. He's a young quarterback. He's got to learn from it. But that can't happen. That fumble on that third quarter play, just throw it away, right? Move on. Don't make a bad play worse. I always tell my younger quarterbacks that you're going to win sometimes on defense. That's okay. But when you start compounding the problem and adding to it, that's when you have an issue. But I really, can't wait to see Jayden learn under Coach Riley and develop into the quarterback that we know he can, because the potential is there. You just got to apply that this week and figure out or fix some of those mistakes.
Our next question comes from Jonathan, and I'm glad he asked this because we actually haven't touched on this yet, but we mentioned it in the post-game episode that Woody Marks was actually questionable for the game because there is a flu bug going around the team. It apparently has gotten worse. If you listen to Riley's presser on Tuesday, the man just sounded gravelly.
He sounded terrible.
It was
love him, but he sounded, Hey, kudos to him for being out there.
I was like, maybe a Zoom presser.
That was
know.
rough. Yeah, that sounded rough.
Just like, I'm just going to say pray for your girl because my immune system is horrible. We're on notice. And so basically, Jonathan said, how do you keep your team healthy when the flu starts spreading? They are masking. They're doing immunity shots. They're trying everything. This is no joke, brought Lysol because
for the mics, right?
Seriously. So Riley, this is behind the scenes. Riley was mic'd up, and we have 2 sets of mics, and he took the mic off after the presser and said, "Don't give this to Lynn," because he was like, "That's how much I feel contagious."
Lynn's not sick, right? He's still
he's fine right now.
Okay.
So I was like,
knock on wood.
The mics are going to get sanitized right now. So so I brought that today to be safe. But I'm a little nervous. I'm not going to lie. If we don't have an episode at some point, that's why.
Well, I was supposed to go interview Luke Heward, which I still am going to. But I'm going home and I'm going to do a Zoom interview later. I'm not going out to practice like I normally do.
Well, also like with Thanksgiving coming up, not that I'm actually having a real Thanksgiving because football, but you know what I mean? Like it's just
football Thanksgiving.
Yes, but just be healthy, everybody. But how do you do it, Cody? How do you do as a team?
You don't. I mean, it's just you just hope that no one, you hope no one that one person doesn't get it, and then from there you hope they figure it out in time to where they go home and stay away from the team. But it matters sometimes who it is, right? If it's your starters, if it's some of the guys, or your, Lincoln Riley obviously being the head coach that talks to everyone.
Yeah.
If it's maybe an equipment manager or someone there, okay, send them home, and hopefully he's not around the team. But if it's a player that's in those meetings day in and day out, or if it's some of your starters that are touching the football or constantly in the huddle, it gets a little bit more concerning. But yeah, I remember New England in 2019. It hit our team hard, the flu bug.
Really?
And it felt like everybody was doing the right thing, but sometimes you can't, it's unpredictable.
You're so
you can't
close
help
together
that and you spend so much time together.
Yeah.
Whether you mask, whether you do all those things, and just simply touching something that they touched that you didn't know, or not thinking to wash your hands. But yeah, I wish there was a surefire way that makes sure everybody didn't get sick. But it's going to be interesting too. Hopefully we have a full roster out there and guys can get healthy this week. So we got to pay attention to that.
The injury report, or availability report, I should say, will be fascinating because I don't know if they're going to fully divulge, but it'll be, I just, numbers were light. I believe Lynn talked about it. He said he was like, you can see that there's not as many guys out here today. At practice. And
I'd rather that now, though. Let them go home now, recover, and then be ready to go Saturday. But that's still missing some days of prep. It's
Lynn said they're on Zoom for meetings.
Yeah.
But Riley said at the end of the day at 7:30 on Saturday, no one's going to care what you battled throughout the week. It's time to get the win. So that's what he said. He said no excuses. So we'll see how this team fares for the rest of the week. But definitely not great. It's flu season, and you hate it when a team gets it because that's rough for everyone.
Yeah, 100%.
Joe Osorio said, what's your level of concern as this is another quote-unquote road test for this team? What was the procedure during your time with the team for this game?
Yeah, concern level is there. I mean, we've struggled on the road this year, especially in these one-score games, and we've got to find a way to get the job done when we travel. Now, luckily, we're not traveling across country, right? But you could argue against Washington. A couple weeks ago, we stayed on the West Coast, started slow, right? Didn't figure things out really until that third quarter, and then we didn't finish strong. We've got to be able to turn the page in that category. But if you need extra motivation this week to get excited to play UCLA, whether we're sick, whether there's a flu bug going around for this football team, whether there's some injuries, some guys that aren't playing or getting back, getting healthy. If you need any extra motivation this week, then you're at the wrong place. Because if you're not going out there ready as a Trojan to play the UCLA Bruins at the Rose Bowl, on a night game under the lights, then
to seal bowl eligibility,
to get bowl eligibility, and also keep them from gaining bowl eligibility or guaranteeing that. So this is obviously a great opportunity for us, but you can't just go out there and play off of all emotion, right? You can't just go out there because of the circumstances, or it's a rivalry game, or we're pumped up, that's going to take care of everything. That's not true. You've got to go out there, even though it's quote-unquote an away game, and we're traveling, I guess, 10 minutes down the road or 10 miles down the road, but we still got to go out there and be able to fix the things that we fixed on the road. I don't expect crowd noise to be a factor this week. Obviously, UCLA has not been known for that, or the Rose Bowl has really not had that. Well, 2 years ago, though, when that game, both ranked opponents playing for a chance to go to the Pac-12, that was sold out. So who knows? Maybe we will pack it, or maybe there'll be a lot more Cardinal and gold in the stands for this game. But yeah, like I said, either way, we've got to fix some of those issues that we've had on the road with those late second half turnovers, with not finishing teams, not putting them away when we have the opportunity to, and then protecting the football. The biggest thing for me this week is win the turnover battle. We've got to continue to do that, take it away on defense, but also protect it on offense.
Our final 2 questions come from both Trojan Mom and Mr. Ashcraft. They asked the same thing. They both said, what is your all-time favorite memory playing against the Bruins?
My favorite memory as a Trojan here at USC against you, I have 2 of them. My first one would be when I was on the sideline. I wasn't playing yet, but Matt Barkley was the starter, and I was on the team for the 50-0 win in the Coliseum. That was great. And then my senior year when I was playing and I was a starter, we beat UCLA for my last game in the Coliseum ever to win the Pac-12 South and have a chance to go to the Pac-12 championship. So, yeah, some great memories against UCLA and obviously some I got to be a part of, but some I got to play in as well. And hopefully some of these guys can create some of those memories this week and get a big win in the Rose Bowl.
I also just need to share Tyler's prediction. He shared it on Instagram. He says, I predict 3 forced turnovers, 2 fumbles, and 1 pick. It gets the offense electric. Beat the Bruins, he says.
Beat the Bruins. I love it. That would be awesome. Let's go no turnovers as well on offense. Create 3 takeaways on defense. I like our chances if we can get that done.
Alrighty, Cody, that's all I have for questions. I also just want to give a scheduling note. We will be doing a home pod for our preview episode next week. I just want to make sure that Cody has a life and has a proper Thanksgiving. So just scheduling update there.
Yes, that is correct. And with that being said, fight on. Love you guys. Let's go get the job done this week. Let's take care of business. This is where names are made, where legends are made in these rivalry games. What better way to finish the season? We get to play the Bruins this week, then we get to play the Irish next week, but we've got to go 1-0 this week first in the Rose Bowl. Fight on. Love you guys. Hopefully we're talking to you Sunday for a Victory podcast.
Alrighty, that's going to wrap it up. Like the man said, we'll see you on Sunday for a recap episode. That's Cody. I'm Keely. We'll see y'all next time.